Hello, this is Jamie Novak, and I'd like to welcome you into Where to Start When You Don't Know Where to Start. And I'm so excited. This is possibly one of my most favorite classes because no matter where you feel you are in the process and whatever emotions are coming up for you around that, overwhelm, uneasy, just wanting a sense of relief and calm, the great news is that the steps we're going to cover tonight will solve that. So I love that we're going to keep it simple. Let me kind of give you an idea of what to expect tonight. Of course, by the end of our time together, you will understand the concept of 3 for 3 and be able to apply that to your life starting tonight. And I think it's one of my trademark secrets, that 3 for 3, and I think you're going to love it just as much as I do. Of course, then we're also going to sort of outwit procrastination, and a lot of times knowing where to start and then starting are kind of two different things. So we're going to talk about that. And so also you're going to know your very next step so that you can start to see progress in some of the areas where you felt like, I'm just not sure where to begin. So as we get started, I'd like to say that I've kind of realized that this idea of where to start when you don't know where to start is a two-part issue. The first is where to start the big picture, right? Because if you just think of like your whole life and everything encompassing personal and business and home life and everything, it's like, okay, well, in the grand scheme of things, where do I begin? And then if we're kind of lucky enough to pin it down to something and go, okay, I definitely know that I want to get more organized in a certain area, or I want to, look to make a change or learn something new in my profession, or personally, I'd like to really start to, take better care of myself and maybe eat, a little healthier or something. So now it's not the big picture. Now it's bringing that picture into focus, but it's the little picture, the details. So some of us get stuck on the big picture. Some of us kind of get stuck on the details. And for some of us, we can raise our hands for both of those issues. So we're going to really solve both of those with this 3 for 3 concept. And the great news is that you're starting at the most perfect time. I know a lot of us, I hear it all the time, well, I'm going to wait to kind of take some of these projects on until the first of the year because, New Year's resolutions is so popular. And you think, okay, what we know for sure is that the majority of New Year's resolutions fail, so waiting until January 1st is not a great strategy. And waiting until you're less busy, until you have a couple days off from work, waiting until, something significant changes in your life where you feel like, okay, I can start now. That waiting time is just time lost, and I love that we're just going to take action immediately regardless of whatever else is happening, because we can always say, well, I'm going to wait until, I'm less busy, or I feel more motivated, or I learn a little more, or I research a little more, and really we're always going to have a lot going on, and we could always research more, and we could always, look into it, and so just taking action now is the best place to start. So as we look for that, I'm really going to walk you through this concept of 3 for 3. So what we're looking for is that, you kind of maybe are thinking about, well, in my own life, I can really see where things are kind of moving along. I've got a routine when it comes to maybe your desk in the office. But then if we were to think about, the spare room in your home, well, maybe that's not really moving along so well. Or maybe you feel like, okay, I've got some things under control in the house, but now the holidays are hitting, and I kind of feel like, oh my gosh, that's sending things into a little bit of a tailspin. So if you feel like you can identify some areas where you're really doing great, and then some areas where, well, we kind of want to tweak it, then this 3 for 3 is absolutely going to work beautifully. So here's how that concept works. What we're looking for is to identify 3 areas where we'd like to really focus our attention for the next 3 months. That's the concept of 3 for 3. 3 key areas where we want to focus our attention, our time, our energy, possibly some of our budget, depending on the type of project it is, for the next 3 months. So you may be saying, well, Jamie, hold on now, because I was really kind of hoping that we were going to talk about, with maybe the holidays and thinking, okay, well, where do I even start with my holiday planning? And, of course, 3 months from now, that's not really a relevant topic. So how does that work out? Or maybe you've got a small project at hand, like just one small area you'd like to organize, and it's certainly not going to take 3 months, or at least we hope it doesn't. So, okay, if the project wraps up prior to the 3 months mark, great news. You can just roll another project in. Now, the opposite can happen, right, where the project takes longer than 3 months. And that's fine too. So at the end of that 3 month mark, you can decide to sort of renew that same, or you could put that one on the back burner and take something off the list and start fresh. And that's completely up to you. So now you may be thinking, okay, well, this 3 for 3 concept sounds like it could work for me. Really honing it in on 3 points and really having a laser focus and knowing where to put my attention sounds great, but the prioritizing can kind of get in the way. So if you have a pen and paper handy, or if you already have printed off the worksheet, I know some people will say, I don't want to write on the worksheet quite yet, even though you could print another copy. There's sort of that intimidation factor. You don't want to fill it in wrong, so you kind of want to write on the back of an envelope first. So whatever's going to work for you. Or if you're more comfortable just kind of hearing the concepts through, then sit back and listen, and you can always go and then do your worksheets at a time where you've got some peace and quiet and can really focus. The great news is, for most of us, we're going to fill these worksheets in about 5 minutes or less. So we're not talking about a whole hour. You don't need a half a morning. It's really just get in, fill them out. You can't really fill them out wrong, which is really good news, and they don't take long. There's not a lot of debate about it. It's pretty straightforward. So that being said, we're looking for 3 areas where we're going to focus our time and attention. One of those areas I would suggest being your home. And so we'll talk about what some common categories might be under that home umbrella heading. The second area, we want to choose something in the business. And if you're not currently working or not working outside the home or don't have a home-based business, then what we also think of business would be financial. So, something in that realm. So we've got home, we've got business/financial, and that third category would be personal, just, self-development and just personally. So those are the 3 broad categories, and we're looking for most of us to create that more balanced. I don't think there's ever a time when it's completely balanced where you go, okay, here's the pie, and I've got, a third, and a third. Probably not. It might be a little less one day, a little more one day, but to kind of get as much balance as possible, what we're really looking for is one in each of these 3 broad categories: home, business and finance, and personal. So as I said, that something might have automatically come to mind for you in one or more of those categories. So you're looking for one in each category. And I would say, there's no cookie-cutter solution that's going to work for all of us. That's a generality where I'm saying that, just to keep as much balance. But if you feel like for the, 3 months you really need to tip the scales and do 2 in one category and 1 in another because the other one's just going along smoothly, then we can be flexible and work with that as well. But for most of us, I think you're going to find 1 in each. If something came right to mind as I said those categories, then that is probably where you're going to want to start. But if you're feeling like, I don't know, let me think about this, then what you can do is just kind of either in your mind go through a list, or if you wanted to kind of jot down. Now, this is no list that you necessarily have to keep forever. You don't even have to keep it past the time that you're listening tonight. It just really is to kind of get your thoughts down and be able to look at them. So let me give you some common categories that tend to come up under each of the headings. Under home, we'll often see things like organizing. And organizing the whole home, the whole first floor, a specific area, papers, just, something like that. So home. Organizing calendars and to-do lists and wanting to pare down or get a handle on those, that also can come up. There may be a home renovation or home improvements or home repairs, getting the home ready for a specific time of year like summer, winter, holiday, that kind of a thing. Just little home projects that have kind of, fallen off the to-do list, changing light bulbs and tightening hardware and screws and things, just those little things that would make life a little bit easier. You'd also want to then look at the business, the financial aspect of things, professionally. Is there a job search that you want to do? Are you changing jobs? Are you looking for a job? Are you thinking to maybe learn more skills within your profession to hopefully make yourself even more valuable to the company? Maybe increasing your skills, organizing your desk, starting a home-based business where you think, I don't know, maybe my hobby could turn into a business and I really want to focus my attention there. Maybe looking at simply your finances, getting your finances in order, looking to pay down some debt, just learning about a particular financial project, like if you're not really that clear on your 401k and did you roll it over and do you need to meet with someone, and maybe you simply want to consolidate bank accounts because you feel like you've got a couple of bank accounts all over and they're scattered. That would certainly be one. Saving more, all of those types of things under business and finance. And then that third category, that personal category, this is where we're looking at health and hobbies and communities and who you're spending your time with and how you're spending your time and, what's missing for you. Are there traditions, physician's appointments that you want to make or need to make, joining a walking group, a reading group, yoga, exercise, wanting to just try new recipes and really, master maybe some culinary arts. This is the kind of thing where it doesn't necessarily fall under home. It's not really business, and it's just important to you, and it's something that maybe you've been thinking, I'll get to it later when I'm less busy, and we haven't seen that time happen. And so this is usually the part where everyone goes, well, okay, maybe I'll just skip the personal because the home and the business seem more important, and, I can always get to myself later. When in fact, that's the opposite, I think, of how we were going to be thinking. If we had to skip anything, I would skip the other two and just go with personal because that's what's going to really recharge you. Going to give you the energy and the ability and the motivation. I mean, if you're not feeling well, if you didn't get to your doctor's appointments, if your energy's not up, then it's impossible really to focus on the other two. So I think this is possibly the more important category, which is why we're choosing 3 for 3, one in each of these umbrella categories. So I'm hoping by now that something has really stuck out for you under home, under business or financial, and under personal. And as we're kind of thinking about the next 3 months, it would be great if we could actually give a theme to our next 3 months in each of these categories, where you're going to say, you know what, in my home, I'm just looking to be able to find things or have less chaos, more harmony, a home that's inviting, a home for entertaining guests, So if we can boil that down to a theme. How about a theme in your business / financial where, you might say, well, I want to save more money. Well, I think we can all raise our hands to that one. So we want to get real specific and say, I want to have $1,000 in a, excess spare savings account. Now, we want this also to be a doable theme where we wouldn't necessarily, unless it was possible for us, we wouldn't say, I want to have $25,000 put away. That could be a long-term goal, but in the next 3 months it has to be doable, or you're really going to set yourself up to fail. And I'd much prefer to set us all up to succeed. So we're looking for a doable theme. Under personal, maybe you say, well, I wish I was healthier. But unless we're very specific and say, I want to eat one really well-balanced meal at a table every week consistently, then that's a great theme. So a lot of times you can kind of think of a theme as sort of like a New Year's resolution. It's kind of like what you might say at that time of year. I don't like to call them resolutions only because a lot of us have had negative things happen with them where we set ourselves up and it didn't happen for us. So I kind of like that word theme a little bit better. So now, underneath our theme, in each of these 3 categories, we're actually going to write down 10 things that you could do, not 10 things that you will do, or at least not all at once right now, but 10 things that you could do that would help you achieve or reach that theme, that would support that theme. And the great news now about having that theme that really is in alignment with, how you want to go through the next 3 months, it's very easy to knock off the stuff that you're not going to do because it doesn't match the theme. a lot of times I think we'll say to ourselves, well, I'm procrastinating. When in fact, it's not really procrastinating. A lot of times it's just that we haven't convinced ourselves that we should do it. It's kind of like we feel like we should because someone else is, someone told us we should, our sister-in-law is doing it, so we think we should do it. It really has to be important to you. Otherwise, it's really not going to happen. So that's why these themes are great. Let me give you a quick example. There was a woman that I was working with privately over the phone. I don't do in-home sessions, but with all the technology now, Skyping and photos and stuff, we were doing our phone sessions, and she kind of had come to our first session saying, well, she had this room that was kind of one of those multi-purpose rooms in her home. It was a home office and a exercise and craft, and it was kind of one of those rooms, right? We can all identify it. It's a little bit of everything. It's the guest room when company comes, and she had been trying for years now to really organize that space. She had bought containers. She had hired a closet company to come in. She had to cancel the appointment because the closet company couldn't step in to actually take the measurements, but she had, gone as far as to make that appointment, and she really just felt like, at every turn, it just wasn't happening for her. And she thought that she should organize it because she thought she should be inviting company over for the holidays and entertaining, even though that really wasn't her thing. She would rather go to someone else's home. But, she was always raised to think she should entertain, so that's where that came in for her. And so it was really no wonder as she was talking, because she was always using the word, well, I should do this and I should do that and I should exercise. And really all those things, they just weren't in line with where she was in her present life. But as she started to tell me a little bit about something that was in the corner of that room, it was these fantastic fabrics that she had been, selecting for years. And she had this little technique of creating like purses out of these scarves, and she just loved doing it. And every time that she would dig out the material and make one and give it as a gift, it was just so well received, and she would see the people use it, and she felt so special, and people would actually ask if they could buy them. And she had made one or two and sold them, but, didn't think much past that. Well, as we talked a little more, she realized that, as she was talking about that, it kind of sounded a little exciting. She got a little pep in her step as she talked about that project. And then she really, she started telling me about the colors and how she made them and the different drawstrings she made. And you could just kind of feel the passion oozing out of her as she was sharing this story with me. And we knew right then, or at least I did, and I think she kind of came along for the ride with me, that was going to be our starting point. And what we decided was that she was going to clear some space to start making another one of those bags, and she gave herself a deadline as to when it had to be ready. So she had to clear the space to get the supplies out to make the bag, to have the bag ready for the deadline. And wouldn't you know, for the first time in years, she followed through. She knew where to start when she really felt like she had no clue where to start before. She was motivated. She was energized. She didn't procrastinate. She was almost excited to start clearing stuff out. And the best part is, because she was organizing, she needed to pare down and get rid of some things and find some things, new homes. And that was a really easy decision because she was able to weigh the idea of, I need more space to create my bag versus, this little porcelain figurine or this gift in a box that I never gave. And when she, looked at those, the scales tipped, and it's like, well, of course, we're going to let that item go so I can have the space. So the decisions came so much more easily for her. And she ended up clearing out the whole room, creating this grand space where she could create these bags, started a business doing it with Etsy online. For those of you that know, it's you can sell your handmade items. And it's bringing in, a little something for her. But more than that, it's a passion, and she's just so excited to do it. And she followed through and met her goal, and it was wonderful. So she went from had no idea where to start, had felt like she had failed time and again, and when she filled out this 3 for 3, her immediate goal was just to have one bag done in 3 months, and that was under her personal, which I guess also could have gone under business because we were hoping it would be money, but she didn't want to attach that to it yet. It really stayed personal for her. And she did it. And she did it way quicker than the 3-month mark. And that's what I was saying earlier. You don't have to extend it to 3 months. She was able to say, okay, I accomplished my goal, and now I'm going to do another one and another one. And all of a sudden, it just snowballed for her. So it was a very exciting time. So I think you can see hopefully where that 3 for 3, you think, okay, well, how would it actually play out for me? And this is it. So that theme has to be personal to you, because if it's not, it's just not going to work. So you might want to ask yourself a couple of questions. Do I know who would need to do? Remember, we're writing those 10 actions that you could take towards that theme. So let's say you decided you wanted to have that $1,000 in a spare savings account. Well, what are some of the 10 actions that could happen? You could sell some things on Amazon or eBay. That's an action or two. So who would do that? Would that be you? Would you, hire the local teenage girl who typically babysits, and you'll hire her to list the item for you? So who would do it? What would you need to do it? Obviously, if you're going to sell something, you would need something to sell, like, 10 books from your bookshelf, So do you know what you would need, how you would do it? If you don't know how to list something on eBay, then who does? We need that resource. When will you start? And we'll talk a little bit more about deadlines in a minute. Why are you doing it? And this is what goes back to that theme. And the last thing is it bite-sized? And we see this all the time where we sort of overestimate the project. And so as you're writing out those 10 actions that you could take, of which we're going to choose which one is the first one to take, as you're choosing the 10 ones, what could I do? You don't want to say, well, I could, spend a whole weekend organizing my basement. Well, you could, but again, we really want to set you up to succeed. And a whole weekend in the basement sounds like a recipe for disaster. But you could spend an hour, that kind of a thing. You could invite a friend who's particularly skilled in organizing and ask her to come over and maybe share some storage techniques in your basement, and then you could make dinner. So do a little kind of a barter, and you see where if it's not you, but it has to be bite-sized. So now we have our theme in each of the 3 categories. We have 10 or more if you kind of, as your mind starts going and you start thinking of more, your list may be a little longer, but a good 10 under there. So you have 10 under home relating to your theme, 10 under business or financial relating to that theme, and 10 under personal. And what we're doing now is, as we're writing those out, it's sort of all those thoughts that swirl around in our minds, and we're like, well, I could do this, I could do that, and so now we're actually seeing them pen to paper, or if you're typing them, you can actually, you see them, and it becomes very clear when they're kind of rolling around in your mind and you're trying to decide it's a challenge. So now we have our actions relating to our theme. Now's the time to make a decision. The great news is you really can't choose wrong. We need to choose the next step you're going to take in each of the 3 categories. Could there be a better step than another one? Possibly. Could there be one that you take it and realize, oh, wait, I skipped a step, I should have done this first? Sure. But until we actually choose the next action and then follow through and get up and actually do it, we won't know. All the planning, all the writing, all the thinking it through in our minds, nothing compares to actually doing something. So whether it's picking something up and deciding about it, whether it's, going online and looking at jobs, whether it's going to the store and looking at paint colors, whatever it is, you have to do something. And so that where to start when you don't know where to start, we can get tripped up on, well, what comes first? And you just have to start. So look at that list and circle the one action that really speaks to you. Of the 10 actions on that list, chances are there's a couple that you're like, yeah, well, I could do that, but it doesn't really sound that exciting. Or I could do that, but I'm not really sure how. Or I could do that, or wait a minute, I could do this one, and this one, you know what, I really could do that one. That's the one. I think, more times than not, that's what happens. One just sort of rises to the surface. And you go, okay, that's my next step. It needs to be a small step. Like we said, it's not going to be cleaning out the whole basement. It's, maybe doing one section, getting one storage container. It's one little step. Now, we need to take that step and give it a little bit of a timeline. As we're kind of working through this concept of 3 for 3, the first few times, or maybe just the first time, it can feel like, okay, I've got to get all these pieces, and there's lists of 10, and there's themes, and, just trust me, there's a little bit of a learning curve here. But once you do it once or twice, you go, okay, that was easy. Now I've got it. It's really, it's not as challenging as it seems. I know exactly what I've got here. I'm choosing my themes. I'm writing my possible actions. I'm picking one. And now I've got to make my timeline. It really is that simple. So if you're starting to feel like, okay, well, the concept sounds simple, but these little pieces underneath, the little moving pieces, I want to wrap my head around them. Just kind of work with me here, because it really is, it's going to make a ton of sense. So now we've selected our next first step. So let's kind of go back to that idea of wanting to have that $1,000 in an account that's sort of just extra, which, depending on where we're starting from, that could sound like, I don't even know how that would happen. 100 would be amazing. And, maybe you're feeling like, well, 1,000, I think I could definitely do that. So again, it's doable. So at the very bottom of the paper, when we're making our timeline, we're writing in our specific goal. So 3 months from now, having that $1,000, stamped on that account. And now we need to work backwards to figure out, well, what are the steps to making that happen? So if we decided on that, now maybe it is looking through the house, kind of giving it a once-over and filling a bag with items that you're no longer using and loving, but that could possibly bring in some cash. And, of course, we know anything with a label, anything new and unused in a box. Those are the kinds of items, anything hot in the news right now, anything in the media, those are the kinds of items that are going to sell. Clothing that's new or anything with a brand name, that's going to do great at a consignment shop. And you can head over to consignmentshops.com and put in your zip code and find one nearby. So it's what are the little steps that you're going to take along the way to reach that goal at the end. And then you're going to know very clearly in that timeline what has to happen pretty much starting today to meet that 3-month mark. And it might happen sooner than 3 months, or 3 months might come up and you go, okay, I'm not quite there. I see progress, but I'm not done. And you just kind of renew that one in that category for another 3 months. So we know now in each of the 3 categories we have our 3 for 3, right? And you might think this is where we were going to stop, because that was the whole idea. We need 3 for 3 and we're good. But if we kind of left off here, we'd be missing the most important part. And you definitely want to pay attention here, because we need to now make the time and make it happen. I think a lot of times we've sort of mulled it over in our minds and said, okay, this is kind of what I want to do next, or, and nothing's really happened with it other than we may have decided sort of what we wanted to do. But we didn't know exactly where to start and how to get going with it. So this is how it happens. You need to make the time. It's not going to happen in your spare time. There is very little spare time these days, right? We're so busy all the time. So, we actually do have to dedicate and make the time. I love to use reminder services like rememberthemilk.com. Rememberthemilk.com. It's a free reminder service where you can plug in reminders. And even if you're not plugging in the next step and what you need to do, you can simply be plugging in that it's going to send you an email just to remind you of your 3 for 3. Just seeing them and reading them and knowing that it's on your mind goes a long way to making it happen. You can use small gaps of time. We don't all have, a whole weekend to dedicate towards our project. So we can use small gaps of time, something like If it's a project in the kitchen and we're waiting for the water to boil for the pasta for dinner, there's some time. If you record an hour-long program and fast forward over the commercials, you've got about 22 minutes there. So we can start to look to find those little gaps of time. And the great news is because you know what to do now, you can just jump right into the project instead of spending that little gap of time trying to figure out what to do. Another thing would be to set yourself a new routine. There's a lot of things that already happen in your life that happen because they're on a routine. Changing the batteries in the smoke alarm when you change the time on the clocks for daylight savings time. Watching your favorite program and then getting everything ready for the next morning and then going to bed. There's just routines that are happening. Your grocery shopping maybe usually on a specific day. We can add a new routine in that is working towards your 3 for 3. So every Wednesday at 8 o'clock is going to be, dedicated to that time. And it just becomes a new routine in your life. And routines, usually that's how things are going to happen. Possibly you do have a big block of time coming. Maybe. I wouldn't bank on it. I mean, it's possible. But if it does happen or you can create it, then, again, you're going to know what to do because you have your next step ready to go. Now, of course, you also might want to consider writing your themes on like an index card and putting it in your wallet or on the dashboard of your car, posting it on a sticky note and tacking it to your bathroom mirror, something where you're going to see these items. If you're on the computer a lot, you can use it as your screensaver. Type the words and your themes as your screensaver. The thing is, we want it to be present. We want it to kind of sink in and see it all the time. So that's really where our focus is. Now, the other piece to this is there are a couple of common pitfalls. One would be putting yourself down. We'll talk about that one. Procrastination, which I think we all can relate to, and a little bit of perfectionism. So that putting yourself down, it kind of goes like this. You think, well, I've been really wanting to clean off the kitchen counter, put away some of the appliances that I'm not really using, and get a better place for my papers. And you kind of look back and you go, oh, okay, well, I've got a file system that I use more often than not, and I was able to, find space to store the blender. Yeah, that was good, but look at the rest of the countertop, and I have to do this, and I have to do that. So all of a sudden, where you were kind of giving yourself a little credit and patting yourself on the back for a success, you quickly diminish that by going, yeah, but look at all there is still left to do. Well, there's always going to be more to do. And so when we kind of take the credit away from ourselves, we very quickly now are back in that spiral of, I don't know why I thought I could ever do this. It's always going to stay the same. I'm doubting myself. I wonder who I think I am to do this. So if you're kind of living in that woulda, shoulda, coulda, if I'd only, I wish I'd started sooner, I just kind of silence that thinking and that self-criticism. It is what it is. You are where you are. You're starting with what you've got. And the great news is you're starting. You're here, and you're really, this is the time. You're focused. You've got your energy up around it. It's going to happen for you. And so we can, rethink a million things, but we can't change it. It is what it is today, and we're just going to start from this point on. That other piece is that procrastination. Now remember, the very first key to procrastination is identifying whether or not you've really invested in the outcome. Because if you just feel like you should do it, chances are you're not going to. So we can look at can you leave yourself a piece of cheese? And what I mean by that is some sort of a reward. Do you want to go get a hot pumpkin coffee or a nice latte? Well, you might do that anyway. Hold off until you do a little bit towards your project, and then go and enjoy that, and knowing that you've worked towards your project. Do you have a buddy, someone who's kind of on the same page as you, wanting to really focus on this 3 for 3? The two of you can kind of team up and hold each other accountable, which is a great way to go. Don't be afraid to send me an email and say, hey, listen, I was in class, I'm doing it, here's where I'm starting. Take a before picture. And, this way it's going to be visual proof of your project if you're working on an area of your home. So you can look back and say, wow, look at all that I did. Of course, you can also act like you're on a game show. Set a timer for 18 minutes and work until the buzzer sounds. It's a great way to stay focused, hopefully avoid distractions as much as possible, and really challenge yourself to see how much you can get done in that amount of time. Another one would be to kind of eat your peas, and what we mean by that, just do the worst possible thing on your list first thing in the morning, so everything else that day seems like a cakewalk. And one of the last ways to overcome that procrastination is simply to tell someone. Go public with it. If it's that you wanted to clear out the guest room, then invite company to stay for the weekend. Now you've got that deadline in place, and someone knows it's going to happen, so you'll kind of have to follow through. As we start to wrap up, I'm going to share with you some techniques around that perfectionism, and I think kind of leave you with some lasting thoughts now to really solidify this 3 for 3 concept and get the ball rolling. With the perfectionism, you might think, well, someone who is a perfectionist certainly wouldn't have these projects lingering around and wouldn't be someone who struggles with where to start. And actually the opposite is completely true. Those of us that do have some perfectionistic tendencies, the reason we're not moving forward is because we want to do it just right. We want to choose the perfect next action. We want to write the perfect to-do list in the perfect journal. We want to find the perfect reminder service online so we can write things and type things in there. We want to make the next step so perfect. We want to get the perfect storage container. We want to get the perfect recipes. You see where I'm going with this. We set ourselves up with these impossible standards that we couldn't possibly meet, and so we don't follow through because it's just not going to be as good as we hoped it would be anyway. So if that sounds like you, we want to really think of this as a first draft, a rough run-through. You can perfect it later. It's nothing that's can't be changed, and we're just going to kind of get that rough draft in and just do something, and you can always go back later. So if at any point you start to feel overwhelmed by all there is to do, overwhelmed by the fact that you're not sure where to start, overwhelmed by simply the concept of 3 for 3 and working through the timeline and just what's my next step, or overwhelmed by choosing the next step, the cure for overwhelm is action. What tends to overwhelm us the most is that we're in our own minds thinking and thinking and thinking and planning and thinking of scenarios and testing out theories and all of that, and we're not actually doing anything. But when you're up out of your chair and you're moving stuff around, that's when you start to feel this relief and this calm come over you. And so even if it's not the best choice, you can't really do it wrong. You simply have to do something. So just a quick little recap now as we kind of look over and think about where we are. We now know our 3 for 3. We're going in one of each category: home, business/financial, and personal. We've kind of looked at all the tasks we could possibly do. We're selecting one of those. We're working out the details of that task. What are the little pieces to make that happen? We're finding time, which brings with it its energy and motivation to make it happen, sending ourselves maybe some little reminders along the way, and focusing on all that we're doing right, because you're doing a lot right. And we're avoiding that self-doubt, that criticism that can start to creep in, saying you should be doing more, you should be farther along, you should have done it differently, because it is what it is. The cure for overwhelm is action, and you don't have to do it perfectly, you just have to do something. I want to thank you so much for joining me for our class, Where to Start When You Don't Know Where to Start. And I'm thrilled to know now that you do know where to start and that you have a plan for when you're going to start. You're going to take your ideas, move them into action, so you're going to go from one day I will to I did. And that's going to be a very exciting time when you can share what you did, what you accomplished. And I know you can do it, one step at a time. This has been Jamie Novak with Where to Start When You Don't Know Where to Start.